group. I know a lot about a lot of you, and you all know Julian Bond, I'm sure, but I'm not sure how many actually know Beth Neville Evans. Have a show of hands? No, here. There's one person. I really think Beth has had one of the greatest careers that I know of. It was a great loss to Julian's wardrobe and to mine. Beth Neville Evans turned her purview from us to the world. Although it was very good for the world. I'm sure that I won't try to go into the details of what she has done in Guatemala, but it's absolutely extraordinary. I give her carte blanche to say whatever she'd like about that experience. And to think that she moved from the intellectual hub of the universe, Charlottesville, Virginia, to the mountains of Guatemala, where people had to walk, am I exaggerating, 10 miles just to get the water each day. And the difference that she has made in their lives has been absolutely extraordinary. I've seen some of the accounts. And it's a little kind of generational reprise here. Beth's parents were missionaries. Beth started out and married husband John, who was an artist. And I think somehow the genes kicked in. And, anyway, Beth Neville.
My great-grandfather was a missionary, my grandfather. So there is something, I think, about that wandering. I don't think, don't claim God, but I have the wandering fever. So I think I wanted to go, I wanted to do something, and I was looking. And while one of my last years of sewing, Jane Matthews is here, was my apprentice, and her brother is Dave Matthews, and he, a few years later, formed a foundation called the Horton Foundation, and I was asked to be on the board. And through that connection, I heard about a young man named Sebastian, who had an AV malformation, a big growth of large blood vessels on the side of his head. And he was from San Mateo Ixtatán in the mountains of Guatemala. They couldn't fix him in Guatemala, and I thought, well, maybe with a little bit of money we could give an organization there some money, they could fix him in Costa Rica. So I flew down to meet him. He had the doctor, and I got there, and about half an hour later, after meeting him, the doctor came in and said, this is just hopeless. He's going to die. There's nothing we can do. And it was just like, whoa. It was heartbreaking for me to see this man and think that, you know, there's nothing. So we took a deep breath. We flew back to Guatemala. On my way home, I had a few days to spend there. And I said to Manuel, who was kind of taking care of him, I'd like to go see where he lives, you know. And Manuel said, you can't. It takes 3 days to get there. 3 days to get back. You know, your flight leaves in 4 days. So he said, but since we didn't do the operation, we had some money left over. David had, the foundation had given them $20,000. So he said, we could go by helicopter. And it was 1 hour. It took 1 hour to do that. Yeah. So we went to San Mateo Ixtatán, which is these 1,000-year-old ruins. And if you talk to any of these people that have been to San Mateo, they can tell you how spectacular that is to land right there in your helicopter, and you're with this man you think he's going to die, and there's a million beautiful Mayan kids swarming around because, you know, they see the helicopter, and there's a storm coming, and you have to leave. You're only there for 5 minutes, and you're just, I mean, I cried for about 6 months after that. But I did decide in that 5 minutes that I would try to figure out how I could come back and find some work that would bring me back to San Mateo. And I thought it would be, you know, making suits or something like that. I was being something with my hands because that's what I do well, and just never worked out. But I came back and talked to David Matthews and said that I had brought the MRI and the angiogram back, that I might try to find a doctor here, and he just, without skipping a beat, said, if you find a doctor, I'll pay for it. And so we actually ended up finding a doctor here in New York, and many operations, the last of which lasted 28 hours. And he got fixed. But one day he was sitting on his bed in his room at our house, and I don't know what we were talking about, but he mentioned, just as an aside, that they had never had a high school ever in San Mateo, Ixtatán, which is a town of 10,000. They can tell you it's very urban. There's a mayor, there's medical services, such as they are, and then around it are surrounding like 70 villages, so it's 30,000 people with no high school. And I said, well, maybe would you think they would like one? And he said, maybe. And he called down to one of the 8 funds that were in San Mateo at the time. And then 2 weeks later, I got this petition, very official, from the mayor. Have you all ever seen it? No. Signed by the mayor, signed by the priest, signed by 20 people. And some of the signatures were just thumbprints. And so that was 2000. That was about 10 years ago. And so I formed the nonprofit in January of 2001, and we took our first official trip in March. And school opened its doors in 2005. In November, I'm going down to the 4th graduation. We have kids. We have a kid in medical school. Thanks to Fernando, we have 2 kids in Mexico studying. We have kids in Guatemala City studying, and I'd like to bring some to this country. There's a scholarship fund for kids that want to go to college, and now we have about 160 students from 7th through 12th grades, and the change, I mean, the change is really pretty palpable. A lot of things would have changed anyway, but the education, because money is coming into the community, lots of people are in the States sending money home, but the education is really, really key to a positive, sustainable development and creation of a sort of viable future for the organization. They have to be educated. And so I feel like we've had a lot of successes, and thanks to lots of people here. So we're in the middle of a 1-month campaign to try to raise about half of our budget for next year. Our budget really is around $225,000. With that money, we run a whole school for 160 kids. We pay salaries for an organization, the community sort of school. It acts as the school board. Everything is managed down there. All I really do, or the Ixtatán, the American arm of the organization, is all we really do is raise money and try to. I do like to find human resources here as well. So it's money. I mean, money goes a long way. But I think Julian's going to say a little bit about money.
Thanks again to the Wolves for opening their home to all of us, and thanks to all of you for coming. Just very much appreciated. You've heard the story how Beth Neville became involved in this, and I want to tell you how Pam and I became involved in this. Some years ago, I teach at the University of Virginia, and I got a note from a student that said, I have a friend who is a fan of yours, and she would like to make you a suit. And I said, well, you know. And then I heard that she made clothes for Tom Wolfe. And that, of course, changed my attitude. And so I visited her. She had a studio in Charlottesville at the time, and so we visited her, and she made this suit. We met Jane Matthews, who was working for them. And it's interesting because Jane said, she may not remember this, Jane said, my brother has a band. She said, well, he'd like you to come here. So, oh, yeah, okay. So we came to see the band. I think we were the oldest people in the bar. And we liked the band. The next thing we knew, they were on
Letterman.
David Letterman. And the next thing we knew, they were selling out Giant Stadium. We want to thank Jane for introducing us to the band. But, anyway, so that's how we met Beth Neville and John Evans. Her husband John is a painter of some renown, and if any of you were able to open the link to the Charlottesville newspaper story about her, you may have seen a quotation from me that described them as the most Christian people I know. And I don't mean in the standard way of being a Christian, of going to church every Sunday and tithing and doing whatever it is that you have to do to be a good Christian. I mean what you have to do to be a good person. And she and her husband are more like that than anybody else we know.